So I have a little bit of a slideshow here. Number one, can you lose fat without exercise? The correct answer to this is yes, you can lose body fat without having to exercise. We probably know a lot of people or have heard of stories of other people that are currently on a drug called Ozempic that don't do any sort of exercise, and they are seeing lots of weight loss. And yes, some of that is going to be fat. Some of it is going to be muscle, but some of it will be fat, and they do not have to exercise. Now, I'll get into why is this the case? Why can you lose fat without having to exercise? And I'll also cover the importance of exercise and why we should be exercising, particularly resistance training, while we are trying to lose fat. The second one, are you guaranteed to lose fat if you exercise? That answer is no. You can exercise. It is incredibly beneficial for internal health, for your cardiovascular system, for your brain. However, you're not going to lose fat if there is a specific nutrition factor in place there. So I'm sure you have either experienced this yourself or heard some stories where people go to group fitness classes or they go to the gym a couple of days a week and they see no changes. There's a reason for that as well. So let's get into some science-y explanation stuff. And if you guys have any questions at all through this, I think I can see you asking questions. If I can't see them right away, I will absolutely pop into it and answer it at the end. I actually have a really big segment of all of the questions. Oh, where did you guys go? Hold on. Hello. Let me bring you back. I'm going to share all of the questions that people had asked going into this. So basal metabolic rate. This is AKA your BMR. You may have heard of this before. So your BMR is the calories that you burn doing absolutely nothing in a day, like literally nothing. Think you are hospitalized and you are laying down all day, you're not moving, you're sleeping, and you are not eating. So when you consume food, that adds to the calories that you burn on top of your BMR. Now, with your BMR, if you are at a higher weight, no matter what your fat to muscle percentage ratio is, if you are at a higher weight, you are going to have a higher BMR. If you're at a lower weight, you're going to have a lower BMR. And then as you lose weight, again, I'm not talking about fat versus muscle here. As you lose weight, your BMR and your calorie output goes down, meaning that number goes down. If you gain weight, fat or muscle, your BMR and your calorie output is going to increase. So they all work together because the metabolism, kind of think of the metabolism like a thermostat. The room is too cold, the heat's going to kick on. If the room is too hot, the air conditioning is going to kick on. So the metabolism is the thermostat in the body of, hey, we have more weight, therefore we can increase the amount of calories that we burn, or we need to burn more calories to keep all of this weight functioning and alive because they're all living cells within your body. Now, that's your BMR. Sedentary calories is your BMR plus your daily movement. So your day-to-day stuff like having a shower or walking to the kitchen or fidgeting or your line of work. Anything that isn't really exercisey, let's say like you work from home and you get out of bed and you go to the kitchen, you pour yourself a coffee, you go to your desk, you sit down, you type at a computer. Even the typing at a computer or talking with your hands or talking or deep think work, that is going to burn some calories as well. So that is your sedentary calories. Now, what we're going to be focusing on and what we as LadyTheFUp coaches focus on is your total daily energy expenditure, AKA your TDEE, AKA the calories out in the calories in versus calories out equation. Okay, so that is all of the calories that you burn in the day, including exercise, including movement, and there are so many things that impact this, and we are going to get into it. So to lose fat, as I mentioned, calories in have to be less than calories out. So I was never good at math, but these little which one is greater signs, I always remember the alligator eats the bigger one. So if you're like, what does this mean? The alligator eats the bigger calories out. You must burn more calories than you consume to lose body fat. Now, when you consume less calories than you are burning, you also put yourself at risk of losing muscle. So we want to offset the amount of muscle that is lost through resistance training and through protein intake. So that goes back to the first question that I asked of, can you lose fat without exercise? Yes, you can, but when you see the weight drop on the scale, you're going to be losing some fat, but you're also going to be losing some muscle. And that muscle is so important when it comes to your metabolic rate. And I will get to your metabolic rates and the calorie calculations, all of that in more detail. So what does this mean? You're in a calorie deficit. If you're working with a Lady the FUp coach, you have absolutely heard this term before. Calorie deficit means you are burning more than you are consuming. A little bit more science. 1 pound of fat is roughly 3,500 calories. So therefore, you need to be in a 3,500 calorie deficit to lose 1 pound of fat. Again, if the scale goes down a pound, it might not be all fat. You might also lose a little bit of muscle. No matter how hard you resistance train and what your protein intake is, as you lose significant amounts of weight, anywhere between 20 to 50 pounds, you are going to lose some muscle. Unless you are on performance enhancing drugs that switch on your muscle protein synthesis switch and prevent that muscle from being broken down, meaning you are never catabolic. Catabolic means breaking down of muscle. You will lose a little bit of muscle when you lose fat, but we want to prioritize keeping as much muscle as that fat comes down. So if you wanted to lose 1 pound of fat in a week, that would mean you need to be in a 500 calorie deficit per day over 7 days, because you got 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 2,500, 3,000, 3,500. Now, do all 500 calories have to come from the same day? No. And this is where some people that do like intermittent fasting, or they do full fast days, or they do really low calorie days, and then they have higher calorie days. When you zoom out, you want the weekly average to be that. However, as Lady the FUp coaches, for the majority of you, you keep your calories consistent day to day because it is the absolute easiest. It is going to help regulate your metabolism. It's going to help regulate hunger. But there are a couple of women that we work with, and if this is something that you are interested in, where we do lower calories on the weekdays and slightly higher calories on the weekends, so they can go out and enjoy themselves without taking themselves out of their weekly calorie deficit. So again, if that is something that you are interested in, have a conversation with your coach, but I will get into those meals out in this and talk about how they impact the calories in versus calories out equation. So things that affect your calories out, your total daily energy expenditure. There are many, many things that contribute to that number. The first one is your body weight and your body composition. So muscle is so much more metabolically demanding than fat is. Therefore, we want to increase the amount of muscle so that your metabolism has to work harder to keep all of those cells functioning. In your first 6 months, typo, don't mind that. In your first 6 months of resistance training, you are going to have what we like to call the newbie gains. It is your physiological adaptation where you are going to build more muscle mass faster than you ever will again. So if I were to draw a chart, hold on, let me make myself big so you guys can see this. If I were to draw a chart of your muscle mass, it would be like, whoop, and then as that's your first 6 months. And then as you start to continue resistance training, it's a lot slower of a peak. I hope that makes sense. And now that I'm here, does anyone have any questions? Let me open up. I think it's the chat that I would find it in. No, you are welcome to type into the chat if you guys have questions. All right, going back to the screen sharing. So another thing, yes, resistance training, first 6 months, big increase in muscle mass, increasing your protein intake. So for a lot of you, when you came to Lady the FUp, you were drastically under eating protein. Many women in their day-to-day lives, many people under eat protein. Now, when you increase that range to 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. So if you're working with a Lady the FUp coach, you very likely fall somewhere within that range, even beyond the 2.2. Studies have shown that up to 4.4 grams per kilogram can increase muscle mass without adding body fat. So we like protein, but if you're someone who comes to us and is like, I can't eat any more chicken, we probably have you on the lower end. But this is where we put, I'm going to say like 95% of our clients, somewhere in this range / upper limit of that, because that is going to increase your muscle mass. There have been a couple studies that are coming out now saying that even if women do not exercise, and they just increase their protein, their muscle mass increases. But we want to combine as many of the benefits as we can, resistance training and increased protein intake. So we want to improve our body composition, meaning less body fat, more muscle. That is going to increase our calorie output. And I'm going to get into a couple examples here. So this is rough visuals of what body fat percentages look like. So we have our stupid lean fitness competitors at 12 to 14% here, 15 to 17%. You've got like visible abs, the obliques are really tight. 18 to 20%, you still have some visible abs, but it's not as soft. 21 to 23, 24 to 26, 27 to 29. And this category here, this third row, this is what would fall under the overweight / obese category. Okay. Another visual we have here, same thing, just so you guys get a decent idea of what they roughly look like. If you want to know your body fat percentage, I highly recommend that you book a DEXA scan. Those little handheld things, the in-body scanners, the scales that run a current through you, those are not accurate. I have one. I did a DEXA scan recently, and my body fat percentage right now is about 25% because I am in a muscle building phase. It tells me I am at 19%, and I am absolutely not. So take those with a grain of salt. Yes, they can consistently give you your weekly stuff, but they're not going to be accurate if you're like, I'm 8% body fat or 20, like whatever it is. So DEXA scans, big fan. But this is like visuals for those of you who don't necessarily have access to that. Oh, I had a question pop up. Where do you get a DEXA scan? You have to get a requisition from your physician if you are in Ontario. DEXA scans aren't very common. The last one that I had to do, I had to drive to Richmond Hill from Barrie. So if you just Google like DEXA scan near me, see what pops up. So we have these visuals in our brain. Keep these in mind because we are going to talk about the shift in body composition. So I have a random case study numbers that I made this person up off the top of my head, but very common kind of demographic that we work with within Lady the FUp. So we have a 40-year-old woman. She is 5'6" in height and she weighs 150 pounds. Okay. Now, before I get into all of this stuff, these numbers are approximate. Okay. These are just scientific plug numbers in, calculation spits out number at the end. This is where having a Lady the FUp coach comes in because we take your feedback and your progress week to week, as long as you're compliant and adherent to the process. And we kind of figure out where you are in this, and there will be outliers both above and below these numbers. Okay, so this is just for educational purposes, let's say. So we have this 40-year-old woman. She weighs 150 pounds. Now, with that 150 pounds, she is 55% body fat. Okay, so her body looks something like this. That means she does not have a lot of muscle mass at all. She is over 50%, so 150 pounds, at least 75 pounds of that is body fat. Okay, so what is her BMR? 1,031 calories. If we look at our sedentary, okay, so I'm moving around a little bit, I'm walking from the couch to the kitchen, that now brings it up to 1,238. And then this upper calorie range burn, I want you guys to think like 60-day challenge where you are doing 5 days or 6 days of resistance training. You're doing 6 to 7 days of an hour and a half of cardio. Again, another typo, that should have said 60. But think of it as like the hard push in the 60-day challenge, or you're getting ready for a photo shoot or a competition prep or whatever your coach has you doing, where you are resistance training 5 to 6 days a week and you have long cardio sessions and you are fatigued. So the upper calorie range, somewhere between 1800. Now, if we look at the lower calorie range to the upper, 1238 to 1800. That is a 600 calorie middle wiggle room. And this is why things can get really fucking confusing when you're trying to figure out how many calories should I be eating, because you could fall in the upper end, you could fall in the lower end, you could be an outlier here. But if we look at adding in resistance training and the same stats, okay, you still weigh 150 pounds, the scale hasn't changed. Oh my God, fuck the scale hasn't changed. I'm so mad. Why is it not changing? But you're now 45% body fat. So if we go back here, that is going to look somewhere around here instead. Okay, so we have decreased that body fat percentage by 10%. What does this do to your metabolism? Your BMR increases. It is now 1,178. Your low calorie range sedentary increases to 1,400 from 1,238, and your upper limit increases as well. So we're seeing about a 200 calorie jump just from you reducing your body fat by 10% and increasing your lean muscle mass by 10%. When we get to 35%, 1325, 1590, 2286. When we get to 25% body fat, so this is where we are looking, we have a little bit of oblique lines on the side. We've got a little bit of definition in the shoulders. The waist is starting to curve in. That is when your BMR is going to increase to 1,400. And then you have 1767 for your lower calorie range and 2540 for that upper 60-day challenge push calories that you are burning in a day. Now, 15% body fat. I put 2 stars here because if you are 5'6" and you are at 15% body fat and you weigh 150 pounds, you are like She-Hulk, because that means 85% of your body is lean mass. You are going to look this conditioned. Okay, so 15%, somewhere around here, you're going to have visible abs, but you are also going, because you're 5'6", which is like moderate height, you are going to have more muscle. So this is kind of an unachieved, like in the case study of a 40-year-old woman being 5'6", weighing 150, this I would say is like possible for some women, but not as many. Your weight would probably be lower than that. I would say it would be somewhere between like 125 and 135, not 150. But this person hypothetically has an additional 15 pounds of muscle mass on top of what I would say it would look like. She-Hulk, really, really big, really muscular. That is the I'm too bulky kind of look. But the 15% body fat BMR goes up to 1619. The sedentary calories, because you have so much damn muscle mass, is 1943. And your 60-day challenge output, this actually goes down a little bit because you have muscle mass and not as much fat. Your body is efficient, 1510. I think that might not be right. I might not have copied that properly, but you get the concept. Ooh, we have another question. Nope, never mind. Okay. So that is what happens when your body composition changes. You add more muscle, you lose body fat, your metabolic rate goes up the more muscle that you have, even if the scale does not change. Things that can impact the calories out ranges. So like, why are these 600 calories on either side, and what can you do about it to make sure that you're closer to the upper end of that without us programming as much cardio as the 60-day challengers are choosing to do? Number 1 is your training intensity. You need to be applying progressive overload, meaning you go into the gym, you take your sets to failure, and then you come back the week after and you do more than you did the previous week and take your sets to failure. If you show up and your rep range is 8 to 12 and you're like, oh, well, I did 10 last week, so I'm going to do 11, that's not going to change your body. Okay. Yes, it is a little bit of progressive overload, but if there is not failure taken, your body is going to go, This is easy. We don't have to change. Let's keep the muscle mass that we have, which is good because if you're losing body fat, that's going to offset the amount of muscle mass that you're losing, but it's not going to grow the muscles that increase your metabolic rate and allow you to eat more food. With the training intensity of lifting the heavy shit, taking your sets to failure, making all of the faces and noises and sweating in your workout because you are pushing yourself so hard, that is incredibly metabolically demanding, not just during, like a lot of my clients reach out to me being like, what should my heart rate be during my resistance training? I don't really care. Take your sets to failure. If we're doing a shoulder and arm day, those muscles are smaller than if we're doing a lower body day with really, really big muscles that are going to demand more oxygen to the muscles, which increases your heart rate because it has to deliver more nutrients to larger muscle groups. So that is going to be, again, don't worry about your heart rate during, but you should be taking your sets to failure. After the session, though, there are micro tears in your muscle. There is inflammation, and it's good inflammation in the muscles because that tells your body, hey, we have tears here. We need to repair because what we just did was really fucking hard and we need to be ready to do it again. And then you go back in the gym and you're like, psych, you're good. You're prepared for that. Here's more. Here's more. And that is the progressive overload of building muscle. Another thing it does is replenish glycogen stores. So within your muscles, you have stored broken down carbohydrates. I like to use the analogy of think of these as your muscle gas tank. So as you are resistance training, that muscle gas tank starts to empty. So by the end of it, it's never really going to be completely empty, but it's going to drain. And then in the following 24 to 48 hours, your body then has to replenish those glycogen stores with the carbohydrates that you are consuming. The next one that impacts the calories out is your cardio intensity. That means you are working fucking hard in your cardio. Unless your coach has otherwise given you less intensity, breathe through your nose kind of cardio, you should be pushing your heart rate as high as you can. You should not be able to talk more than a couple of short sentences, and you sure as hell should be sweating. If you are able to have a conversation with the person beside you on the treadmill or Stairmaster or whatever piece of equipment, you're not working hard enough. It should be a, hey, how's it going? Yeah, great. Hang on. Yeah, I needed a drink. Don't mind me. Yeah, and then aside from HIIT, you're generally not going to burn a lot of calories after the cardio session because you haven't elicited a bunch of muscle damage. You have just fatigued your body. We did a whole conversation on resistance training and HIIT and the exercise or post-exercise oxygen consumption. That is a different video that has already been recorded. So if you ladies want to watch that, message me Instagram, LadyTheFUp or Mighty and say, hey, can I watch that Epoch episode? And I will tag you in the video so you don't have to search through all of our videos. The next one is your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So this is known as your NEAT. So your day-to-day movements and your activity, the type of job that you have. Are you sitting on your butt for 8 hours and then you come home and you sit on your butt? Or are you a shift worker that's on your feet for 12 hours? Are you running around? Do you walk your dogs? Are you playing with your kids? Are you picking them up and carrying them? Did you go grocery shopping? Are you super fidgety? All of these things are also going to contribute because your body does not just burn calories when you exercise. Your body burns calories 24 hours a day, even when you're sleeping. Actually, quite a bit of your calories is burned when you're sleeping. That comes from your basal metabolic rate because your body is repairing, it's doing cell turnover, lots of things happening when you are sleeping. The next thing that impacts this calories out is your dieting history. If you are a previous yo-yo dieter or you have chronically undereaten and starved yourself for a prolonged period of time, or you've lost weight and then you've gained weight and then you've lost weight and you've gained weight, that is going to impact your metabolism on the lower end. Even if you are exercising, one of the things that we see with yo-yo dieters is they do a crash diet, they lose some weight. So that goes back to my first question that I asked all of you. Can you lose weight without exercising? Yeah. There are some people, and I've heard stories of this, and I know friends that just like barely eat for a week or two leading up to an event. What you're going to do there is, yes, you're going to lose some body fat, but you're also going to lose some muscle. And then when the event is over and you're like, fuck it, let's eat all the food, you're going to gain back body fat, that muscle mass, unless you are resistance training, is not going to increase as much. You are going to put on a little bit more muscle as it goes up. But if you lose muscle and then you gain the weight back and there's more fat, and then you crash diet again and you lose more muscle, and then you gain the fat back, you are going backwards in this body fat percentage. You could have started at 25% a decade ago. And with your yo-yo dieting, even though the scale hasn't changed, now you're at 35%. So you're down regulating your metabolism and you're burning less calories day to day. Other things that impact the calories out. Oh, question. Hold on. So let's say I lift heavier next session. Sunita, I am going to tag you in a replay of what it takes to build muscle. I have an hour-and-a-half conversation on that topic specifically. It's kind of off topic and I would go down a rabbit hole. So I will tag you in that one. Okay. So the other things, sleep quality, 8 hours in bed per night. I know this is hard for a lot of people. However, getting that quality rest and recovery drastically has impacts on something called your heart rate variability and your resting heart rate. So those are two things. The higher your heart rate variability is, typically, the higher your metabolism is going to be. When you are getting those 8 hours in bed, your body can truly do all of the repair and recovery that it needs to. Now, if you get less than that, there have been so many studies that show when you get less sleep, you will lose more weight from muscle compared to the amount of fat if you had gotten that 8 hours of sleep. So making these numbers up off the top of my head, do not quote me for a study, but let's say you lost 10 pounds. If you lost 10 pounds and you were getting 8 hours of sleep pretty regularly, sure, there's going to be an off night, then 8 pounds of that is going to be fat and 2 pounds is going to be muscle. Again, don't quote me on the numbers. But if you get 6 hours of sleep a night and you lose that 10 pounds, 4 pounds of that is going to be muscle and 6 pounds of that is going to be fat. So again, we want to preserve as much muscle mass as possible. So we keep that metabolic rate as high as possible. Another important aspect of sleep quality is the amount of deep sleep, aka slow wave sleep, that your body can get. The slow wave sleep is your regenerative phase where it repairs all of the muscle damage, and typically it occurs earlier in the evening. So those first, call it 4 hours that you're asleep, is when you get that deep sleep, and then the REM kicks over slightly later in the evening. Now, if you have a tracker such as an Oura Ring or a Fitbit or a Whoop or a Apple Watch or whatever tracks your sleep, your goal should be to get at least 1.5 hours of deep sleep, ideally closer to 2 per night. And if you are not getting anywhere near that, I highly recommend you watch one of my educational videos that I did on sleep, meal timing, light exposure, screen exposure at night. All of those things can impact your sleep. Another thing, or two things that can impact your sleep, is cannabis and alcohol prior to bed. That drastically impacts your body's ability to get into deep sleep and shortens the duration as well. Stress management. So we all know that stress, there needs to be a balance of it. And when you are in a calorie deficit alone is going to be stressful on the body. And then you factor in emotional stress and mental stress, and you're not recovering. All of that can bring your metabolism down because your body's like, we need to hold on to this energy because it is our lifeline. And we're super stressed right now. We need to protect ourselves for future so that we do not starve and die. We need to keep this energy as a resource. So we're going to bring our metabolic rate down. The body does not know the difference between good or bad stress. Okay. All of it is just stress to the body. So if you're super excited or super sad, it's all stress. It's the same neurochemicals that get released within the body. Now, chronic stress, as I mentioned, can lead to a lower calorie output in a day. However, the body can recover from acute bouts of stress if you're getting that sufficient 8 hours of sleep regularly. So if you had a really stressful day, or you've had like 2 or 3 weeks of really stressful work and you're like, oh my God, but if you're getting 8 hours of sleep, your body can recover from it. Okay. So sleep and stress management very much go hand in hand. Things that impact the calories out, continued, your food choices. So yes, hit your macros plus minus 5 grams, have the flexibility, pick the foods that you want to put in there, but your food choices matter. Digestion is roughly 10% of your total daily energy expenditure. So if your TDEE is 2,000 calories, roughly 200 of those calories is going to come from you eating food and then your body using the energy to digest it and break it down and absorb it to be utilized for all of the different needs throughout the body. This is known as the thermic effect of food, aka the TEF. And out of the three macronutrients, protein has the highest thermic effect of food, meaning your body burns the most amount of calories. It's actually closer to 30% compared to 10 for carbs and fats for digesting proteins. Now, this only pertains to whole food proteins. So that can be your plant-based sources, that can be meat, that can be eggs. Yes, it can be dairy, but like whole foods. If you are going the processed route, it does not have the highest thermic effect of food because it is already processed, and I'll get to that in a second. Food choices, the next one is your fiber. So fiber is a form of carbohydrate. 1 gram of carbohydrates has 4 calories. So every time you eat 1 gram of carbs, that's giving your body 4 calories. However, fiber does not absorb the 4 calories like a normal carb. So that is going to lower the amount of calories that you absorb in the day. So even though you're eating, let's say, 1,500 calories, your body might only be absorbing 1,420 if your fiber is high enough. So that is why, on top of gut health and regular bowel movements and beneficial short chain fatty acids for your gut microbiome, fiber is a beneficial thing. If you are consuming low fiber, if your fiber is lower than 25 grams, highly recommend you increase it. And if you want to watch a video on fiber, we have a replay on that too. Again, just send me a message and I can update you. You can also search all of them in Mighty and they will pop up. So on the topic of processed foods, these require significantly less energy being digested because there has already been mechanical processing. So your digestion is like, oh, cool, these are already unfolded for us or they're broken down. Think of like surface area. Okay, so you have a surface area piece of chicken compared to powder of a protein powder. That's going to be a lot easier to absorb because there is larger surface area compared to the piece of chicken that you chewed and put into your stomach. The digestive system essentially has to do less work. And there have been a couple of studies on this too. I'm pretty sure it was like someone had a ham sandwich with white bread and like Kraft cheese slices and then deli meat, and then compared it to whole wheat bread with actual cheddar cheese and like some better ham that wasn't as low quality. And there was like 150 calorie difference in digestion energy just through that alone. Something like that. Don't quote me on it, but you get the point. So processed food versus whole foods. The more whole foods you eat, the higher this thermic effect of food is going to be. And then the higher on that calorie range of your metabolism you will also be. Finally, I put in brackets hormones and thyroid because yes, I will acknowledge there are autoimmune conditions, there are medical conditions that put you lower on that range. However, if it's not a disease or something that you have been diagnosed with, if your doctors say your hormones are a little low or your thyroid is a little low, improving all of these, the sleep quality, the stress management, the food choices, the muscle mass, your training and cardio intensity, all of that will very likely help with the hormones and thyroid. So we're going to go back to the chart, but I'm going to approach it from a different perspective. So this is a 40-year-old woman. She is moderately active. Okay, so when we're trying to do calculations, they give us like 1.2, 1.6, 1.8. So I just picked the moderately active. What does moderately active mean? I said it is resistance training 4 times a week with the training intensity of taking your sets to failure and progressively overloading and doing 5 days of 30 minutes of cardio. Okay, so that cardio is push yourself as hard as you can. This is going to be her training intensity no matter what. Okay, 4 days of resistance training, 5 days of 30 minutes of cardio, but you are progressing in intensity in all of that stuff. Your intensity does not stay the same because if you stay the same, you're not going to see the physical changes. So this person started out at 200 pounds. So 40 years old, 5'6", 200 pounds. If you are moderately active, your BMR, or no, sorry, without being moderately active, laying in bed, hospital, no movement whatsoever, 200 pounds, your BMR is 1,594 calories. Okay. Now, if we are looking at the lower calorie range, the sedentary, moving around, that is your like 1913. And then here again, you're looking at your upper calorie range, 2400. So I'm going to say like if you're moderately active, you're probably going to be around 2100 calories if you are 200 pounds. So that is your calories burnt, 2100. So we probably have you eating 1600 because that's about 500 calories per day. That's your 1 pound per week. Now, let's say you start losing weight and you are now down 20 pounds. Fucking awesome. We haven't changed anything else. Your BMR, notice that it decreases. So we've lost 20 pounds. You now burn roughly 90 calories less, laying in that hospital bed, not eating, not moving, pretty much sleeping all day. Your sedentary rate also drops, goes from 1913 to 1804. And you're still pushing hard. You're still training like a beast. You're fucking crushing it. It goes down, 2330. Okay. Now we lose another 20 pounds. You'll see BMR drops 1400. The sedentary calories drop 1695. You're pushing really fucking hard, drops to 2189. We now lose another 20 pounds. Drop, drop, drop. That should be a comma. Apologies. 120 pounds. So if we lose 80 pounds, ideally, as much of that from body fat as possible, but we're not talking body fat percentages here. We are just talking the number on the scale and punching those into our calculations. You'll see that the BMR goes from almost 1600 to just over 1200. So you burn 400 calories less laying in a hospital bed doing nothing per day. If you are working your ass off and doing a 60-day challenge, you burn 500 calories less per day being physically active. So as you lose weight, your metabolism also goes down, which is why we want to slowly bring the scale up. I know that sounds scary for a lot of you, but we want to bring the scale up through muscle mass, because if you go from 120 pounds to 140 pounds, but you have more muscle, this is also going to go up. Does that make sense? I hope so. Okay, so that was all of the calories out fat loss science stuff. Now we're going to talk about calories in, because we need to make sure if we are burning more calories than we're eating, you got to know specifically how many calories you're eating. So that comes down to accurate tracking. You do not have to track for the rest of your life, but if you have physique goals and body fat loss goals, you need to know what you're putting into your body. And that means tracking everything that goes into your mouth. That is all licks, all bites, all tastes, not having a goldfish while you're packing it for your kids. Everything that you put in your mouth needs to be tracked. And I know a lot of people out there, and I've called a lot of my women out being like, you should be seeing better progress than this right now. Your MyFitnessPal is on point. You say you're getting your cardio done. What is up? And they're like, oh, well, like when I pre-plan my meals, I pre-plan like 150 grams of chicken and 150 grams of rice, but then I just kind of like eyeball my rice. No, you need to weigh it out. If you put into MyFitnessPal 132 grams of something, you need to have it show on the food scale as 132 grams. If you pre-plan something into your MyFitnessPal and you are pre-planning 150 grams and you accidentally overpour and now it's 160, you go into MyFitnessPal and you update that entry to say 160. Okay. The accuracy of tracking, I cannot stress this enough, is one of the biggest things for us as coaches to help figure out where your metabolic rate is. So that will also bring us to untracked meals. I will get there. The next one is choosing inaccurate MyFitnessPal entries. So I do have a video on using USDA, making sure that either cooked or raw is in there. If you need a refresher, ask your coach. They all have access to that video. But I absolutely do not want to see 1 apple, 1 teaspoon of peanut butter, 1 cup of oats. Magda does an amazing job, if you don't follow her on Instagram, at showing the difference of 1 tablespoon, where one of them is like 70 calories and then the other one is 130 calories. That adds up over time. Make sure you are weighing your stuff. Don't just pick one. Now, if you are in a pinch and you're best guessing, well, that impacts your accurate tracking. The next thing is your untracked meals or your untracked days. So if you check in and you're like, oh yeah, 6 out of 7 of my days, I tracked, I hit my macros plus minus 5 grams, but that other day I tracked my breakfast and my lunch and then I went out for dinner, accurate tracking out the window. We have no idea how many calories went into your body. If you go out, that one meal has the potential to take you out of your entire week's calorie deficit if you are not in a large calorie deficit. A lot of our Lady the F Up women are in, I'm going to say somewhere between like a 1,000 and 3,000 calorie deficit per week. Now remember, 1 pound of fat is 3,500 calories, meaning you are not going to lose 1 pound of fat per week if you honor everything 100%. Okay, because we want to maximize as much muscle building as possible in the process. We are much more body recomposition, bring the muscle mass up, bring the fat down, than we are focus on fat loss and whatever happens to the muscle, we don't care. No, we get strong here. So that one meal has the potential to take you out of your entire week's deficit. And then if you are going out to a restaurant and you are best guessing, just an entree most of the time is over 1,000 calories. And if you have pre-tracked and you're like, oh, I'm leaving like 600 calories for myself to go out for dinner, and then you order an entree and it's 1,000 calories, ooh, now you're over by 400 calories. Then you add a glass of wine, then you add a bite or two of someone's appetizer and a spoonful of dessert. Boom, you're out of your calorie deficit, maybe even in a calorie surplus for the week. You got to track your shit. And then the final one is the binges and the weekend fuck it's. Okay. I have binged before. I have talked about it very openly in many videos. That comes down to habits, neuroscience, your relationship with yourself, your relationship with others, your environment, your stress management. However, those are really, really big things that, again, can take you out of your weekly deficit or even put you into a surplus. I pulled this directly off of Magda. Again, if you are not following her, highly, highly recommend that you do. She put out this visual being like, okay, we as a Lady the F Up coach, we have figured out your metabolism. If you are resistance training, cardio, intensity, it's all there. You are burning 2,000 calories a day. So we're going to give you 1,500 calories. That puts you in a 500 calorie deficit per day. You lose a pound of fat per week. Again, not all of you are there, but just rough example. But you hit 1,500, you hit 1,500, you hit 1,500, and then Friday and Saturday roll around and you are at 3,000 calories, and then you get back on track. That brings your weekly average, if you average it out through the days, to 1,900 calories. So we, again, in our heads, we think you're burning 2,000 calories per day. You are eating 1,900 calories per day. That is a 100 calorie deficit per day, which is 700 calories for the week. That undoes all of that. Why am I not seeing the scale move? Why am I not losing body fat? Because you're not honoring the goals that we give you. There's no way I'm eating 3,000 calories on the weekend. If you have a glass of wine and some pizza and some chicken wings and some ice cream, that's 3,700 calories right there. So please, please be mindful of what you are consuming. If you want to go out for dinner, we want you to go out for dinner, but we want to come up with strategies to set you up for success where it might be for breakfast, you're having a plate of chicken or you're just having egg whites. And then for lunch, you're having like cucumber and chicken so that you are saving your calories for the evening. And that way, it's not going to take you out of the weekly deficit. It might take you out of your daily deficit, but it's not going to undo all of the week's deficit that we have created in our head. Oh yes. Okay, so I'm going to get into the Lady the F Up questions, all of the questions that you guys ask me for the final 15 minutes. So if you have any questions, pop them into the chat. I will cover them. But someone asked, how does fat loss work in the body? So if you are interested in this, screenshot this right now. This is a video by the Institute of Human Anatomy. It is 14 minutes that breaks it down with beautiful visuals and breaks down the science of things way better than I could. So if you want to learn a little bit more about like the physiology of like bonds being broken down and adipose tissue and things moving, check out this video when you can. So this is going to be your final chance to screenshot it. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right. Let me dive into some of your questions. I'm going to pull it up here. Oh, this was one that I got 2 different questions for. So why does the body take a while to lose fat in certain areas of the body? For example, the thighs or back. And then the other question I got is, Why do we gain fat in some areas and not others? Or am I just underestimating that fat is everywhere on the body? Well, fat is everywhere on the body. The answer to this one is it really comes down to genetics, and that's not necessarily something that we have control over. What we have control over is getting you into a calorie deficit so your body starts to lose fat. I have had many, many women that start to lose significant amounts of weight where their boots no longer fit them because their feet have lost fat and they've gone down a shoe size. If you have gotten really lean, people will comment on your diet face because you're losing cheek fat. People say, oh my God, your face is leaner, or you look great, whatever it is. It's like the natural contour of the body. So genetics are going to play a role in where things come off. There is body fat that you are going to lose from everywhere. For me personally, when I lose body fat, the first place I get super lean is my chest. Like right here, I have veins popping all over the place. I have shoulder veins, and like my abs aren't even showing yet. I'm like, come on, come on. But from a female perspective, it makes sense because biologically our purpose is to reproduce, and our uterus and our reproductive organs are all here. So we are going to hold fat here and here and here and the inner thighs. This is where the last to go fat is because biologically we are designed to hold fat in that area. Now, there are going to be outliers. Some people get wicked lean in their core really, really quickly, and they hold more of it in their legs. Some people, their arms are the last to go and they don't see the changes. However, typically, when we as coaches are comparing your progress photos, what we look for first in the early weeks is we pull up your back photos because your upper back and your mid back are going to be the first places that show changes typically. We do look at all of your progress, but that's where we see changes first is like the part all the way up here. And then the core will start to come down and then the legs will start to come down, but your body is going to hold on to the lower abdomen, inner thigh, glute fat, because as a woman, that is where we are biologically programmed to hold it most. Now, sometimes when we see women that come to us, we see that they're holding a lot of weight in their belly. So their arms and their legs aren't overly fat, but they have a round stomach. And that is a sign for us as coaches that this person is potentially insulin resistant. And that is a topic that I want to co-cover with Deb in a future session. She's also talked about it in previous ones, but essentially that means your body does not manage carbohydrates the way it was designed to. And with you not managing those carbohydrates, excess carbohydrates that your body cannot use get stored as visceral fat. So there are different types of fat. This is something I didn't cover in the fat loss discussion, but you have your visceral fat, which is around your organs. It is underneath. So you have like your muscle wall, and then you have your organs. It is all of the fat that surrounds this. The Institute of Anatomy fat video that I referenced, that I had you guys screenshot, that breaks it down really well. The next one that you have is your subcutaneous fat. So you have your muscle, your organs. It is the fat that you can like pinch and squeeze on your body. And then you also have intramuscular fat. So Deb has a really good analogy of like, think of going to a grocery store and buying like a really lean cut of meat versus like a marbled fattier one. That's in our muscles too. So we have fat in our muscles, we have visceral fat, and we have subcutaneous fat. We can't really control where it comes off of. There are specific things. If you are insulin resistant, we need to be mindful of the amount of carbohydrates that you're consuming compared to fats and protein that will help that visceral fat come down. But typically, if you're losing weight, the visceral fat comes out first, and then the intramuscular and subcutaneous are kind of the ones that follow. So if you are someone who previously had a belly and your belly is shrinking, that is a really good sign for your internal health because your organs are not wrapped with this fat or as much of this fat anymore. Am I missing anything? No, I think we're good. Okay. Another question. What does it look like in your body to lose body fat while gaining muscle? So visually, this is where you'd start to look more toned. I despise the word toned, but that's essentially what body recomposition would be. You are increasing your muscle mass, you are decreasing your fat, therefore you're able to see more muscle mass. It could be that you're noticing a little bit of a bump in your shoulder or a tricep or a bicep, or you're noticing little oblique lines on the side of your body. But as you start to change, even if the scale isn't moving, think back to that body fat percentage chart that I had, that is going to be a really good indicator that your body is starting to undergo that recomposition process. This one made me chuckle. I'll read the whole thing. I know Lady the F Up is not about shortcuts and cheat codes, but are there any? LOL. Specifically, can any of these fat loss supplements support the process / speed it up if someone is already doing the rest? So you got the good diet, you got the resistance training, sleep, and then she goes in and lists a couple of these supplements. So any fat burning supplement is essentially a stimulant for a lot of things. Like there are a couple of the supplements that she listed here. I'm not going to get into it because those are all very individual. There are a couple of supplements that can support what was previously a nutrient deficiency. And when we have a nutrient deficiency, our metabolism cannot run as optimally as it should because it's missing ingredients. But the majority of fat loss supplements out there, your like green tea extracts, your Garcia Cambodia, your raspberry ketones, caffeine, and ephedrine. I know ephedrine is one. Yohimbine, if you guys are familiar with those are stimulants. So what those do is increase your metabolic rate by heating up your body and making your heart beat faster. So that is adding more stress to your body. And another thing it can do is it can act as an appetite suppressant, meaning you're better able to adhere to your calorie deficit and not overeat your macros. But, and this is a big but, and this is why we don't recommend them, it can really impact your body's ability to manage stress and recover. There have been, I'm going to say, at least 20 clients that I've worked with, and I know a lot of the other coaches have experienced this too, where a client is stuck and we're like, what the fuck is going on? Like, why is your body not changing? We get frustrated as well, but we pick out a little more, being like, what are you taking? Let's go into your food diary. Let's assess your supplements again. And they say that they're taking a fat burner. And it's like, haha, you get rid of the fat burner, the body is able to recover better, and then we start to see the progress. So they are essentially stimulants that just cause your body to be more stressed. And in order for your body to let go of fat, we need a balance of, okay, it's stressful, but I'm able to recover from it and I'm willing to let go of this fat and increase that metabolic rate because it feels safe and rested enough to do so. When you are eating to build more muscle, how can you avoid gaining fat? You can't. Oh, if you want to build muscle very slowly, you can, because that's kind of like the body recomposition, that 150 pounds that I explained. However, if you are truly going to focus on building muscle, your body needs to be in a calorie surplus. Therefore, it needs to be consuming more calories than you are burning. You need to have excess energy available. And when there is excess energy available, your body can then repair the muscle damage and say, we have so much energy coming in that like we can push this. And then when we get into the gym, we can be even stronger. The comparison last year at this time, I was in a prep, I was in a significant fat loss phase. My body fat percentage was like 12 to 15%, somewhere around there. And I was not nearly as strong, and I was applying the progressive overload. But the way that I could progress last year at this time compared to this year, being in a build, being 25, somewhere between 25 and 30 pounds, depending on the scale, heavier than I was last year, I can move so much more weight. I am stronger. I recover better. And in the 25 to 30 pounds that I've put on, I'm going to say like maybe 5 of that is muscle. Okay. Do not be afraid of putting on body fat. Yes, I'm going into a more aggressive build because I'm a physique competitor. I have goals. You do not have to put on that much body fat, but in order to put on an appropriate amount of muscle in a build, and builds ideally should last about 24 weeks. So that is a minimum of 6 months. You're going to put on some body fat, but see it as I'm also building muscle. And when I go into my next cutting phase, that muscle is not going to go away because you're eating adequate protein and you are going to be resistance training with intensity still. So I hope that answers that question. Is there such thing as losing fat too fast? People praise all these unsustainable, unhealthy diets and lose weight only to gain it all back after and then some. So that goes back to the yo-yo dieting of you lose weight, you lose muscle, you gain it all back as fat. You lose some weight, you lose more muscle, you gain it all back as fat. If you are using a healthy approach with resistance training, cardio, calorie deficit, is the rate at which you lose fat a problem for possibly gaining it back? So there is a reason that we don't do like wicked intense extreme calorie deficits. There's something called the body fat set point. And this is the body fat percentage, and it's going to be different from person to person. This is where genetics come in, childhood upbringing. So again, going back to that dieting history, if you were obese as a child, your body fat set point is going to be higher than someone who was not obese growing up. I know there's only so much we can control as a kid, and now we're kind of stuck with it, but there is a body fat set point. This body fat set point can change over time, but when I say time, I mean years. It takes years for your body to be comfortable with this new body fat percentage to be like, okay, we are safe here. We're good. We don't need to put on additional body fat and go back to where we were. So that is why we do it slower and we do it sustainably. If you lose weight incredibly rapidly, I know of a person recently, a guy who lost 100 pounds in 6 months. Not sustainable, not in a healthy way. He is open about it, that his liver is not good. Like he's got his blood work done and he was in the hospital for a couple of days because it was so aggressive. So you have to remember that detoxing your body, your liver and your kidneys are the things that are naturally designed to detox your body. You don't need detox teas. You don't need detox supplements. Your liver and your kidneys do it. However, there is a threshold for your liver to be able to process things. And when you are burning fat, your body has to process the metabolic garbage extra stuff that gets released. And again, that Institute of Human Mechanics will get into what's happening in the body when fat is actually burned. But your liver can only do so much. So we need to make sure that organ health is safe. We need to prioritize muscle mass so that as you are losing that weight, we are either maintaining, ideally building some muscle, but the faster you lose the weight, the more likely you're going to go right back to your body set or body fat set point if you do not honor the reverse diet process or your maintenance. So if you go into a diet, you cut, you lose your 20, 40, 50 pounds, amazing. And then you're like, cool, lady the F up, thanks, I'm done. I'm just going to go live my life now. If you go back to not tracking your food, unconsciously, your body and your appetite is going to upregulate to bring you back to that body fat set point. So you need to be consistent with the process, especially if you are at the end of a dieting phase, coming back to the reverse diet. Not all reverse diets are going to be perfect. Most of them are not. I will acknowledge that. I have yet to have a perfect reverse diet, but they're very important for exposing your body and getting it accustomed to a new body fat set point. A sustainable weight loss per week would be about 0.5% of your body fat. So going back to that 150-pound, 40-year-old woman example, that's about 0.75 pounds per week. So not a pound on the scale. I know a lot of people have heard like safe sustainable weight loss is 1 to 2 pounds. Depends on what your initial starting weight was. So somewhere between like 0.5 to 1% of your body weight if you really want to get kind of more aggressive, like 60-day challenge-esque. But that is what overall we recommend. All right, I am 2 minutes over for time. I'm going to check the Q&As. Why does the scale not go down, but I lose centimeters on my body? So that is your body fat percentage changing. That is a really good way for you to track your progress as well. Clothes do not lie. Unless like I've seen people stretch their clothes to make it fit. If you are not modifying your clothes in any way, but they are fitting better, that means your body fat percentage is decreasing because muscle takes up less space for the same amount of weight that fat does. It's not equal. Like if you put them on the scale, they're going to weigh the same, but the muscle is going to be this big and the fat's going to be like this big. So as the body fat comes down and the muscle goes up and the scale does not change, your body fat percentage is changing. Therefore, you are losing centimeters because the muscle takes up less space. And that's why you are seeing the transformation in your measurements and your body composition. Well, Floof and Dude make an appearance tonight. Honestly, I don't know where they are. They're somewhere out there. So not tonight, Cherry, but I appreciate you asking. All right. Well, ladies, thank you for attending this and thank you for spending your Thursday evening with me. I hope this clarified a lot. If you want any sort of replays for the fiber, the what it takes to build muscle, I know a lot of women also asked about menopause and fat loss. Not my specialty. Deb is the menopause expert. So I do have it down that potentially in April, maybe May, she can do one more on menopause. We did do a talk on perimenopause and menopause that you can search, or if you want me to tag you in the replay, let me know. Yeah, I hope you learned a lot. I'm a message away as always. If you like this, if you want different topics, if you have follow-up questions, you know where to find me. Enjoy your evening. And again, thank you so much.